Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our Dracula read-along. I am your host, Monica Van Fleet. I am an independent writer and researcher based out of Philadelphia, and today we are discussing Chapter 16 of Dracula. In Chapter 16 of Dracula, Dr. Seward's journal entry from September 29th continues. The previous night, Dr. Seward accompanied Professor Van Helsing to Lucy's tomb, where he removed the garlic, as well as the putty mixed with communion wafer, which was preventing Lucy from leaving. Later, they return with Arthur and Quincy to discover that Lucy is now missing. Van Helsing then reseals the door, and the men wait. Eventually, they see Lucy, but she is now transformed from her former self. And Dr. Seward says, "My own heart grew cold as ice, and I could hear the gasp of Arthur as we recognized the features of Lucy Westenra. Lucy Westenra, but yet how changed. The sweetness was turned to adamantine, heartless cruelty, and the purity to voluptuous wantonness. Lucy's hair has turned dark, and when the men catch sight of her, she is feeding from the throat of a child. The men approach her as blood dribbles from Lucy's mouth when she throws the child away from her and turns her attention to Arthur. She calls to him seductively, saying, 'Come to me, Arthur, leave these others and come to me. My arms are hungry for you. Come and we can rest together. Come, my husband, come.' Van Helsing intervenes, holding his crucifix between Arthur and Lucy flees towards the tomb, but the putty with the communion wafer stops her from re-entering. On page 201 of the Norton Critical Edition, we read, Van Helsing broke the silence by asking Arthur, 'Answer me, oh my friend, am I to proceed in my work?' Arthur threw himself down on his knees and hid his face in his hands as he answered, 'Do as you will, friend, do as you will. There can be no horror like this ever any more,' and he groaned in spirit. Following this, Van Helsing unseals the tomb door by the tiniest crack, and Lucy slides inside, where Doctor notes that scarcely a knife blade could have gone. Once again, Van Helsing seals Lucy inside the tomb, and the men agree to return the next afternoon. When the men reconvene at the tomb once again, they unscrew the coffin. The love the men felt for Lucy turns to disgust as they look at the thing that she has become. Van Helsing assembles his tools, including operating knives, a soldering iron, and a 3-foot wooden stake and hammer. Van Helsing explains what the undead are and that they are also called Nosferatu. He says that if the undead feeds on a person, that they will become a vampire too, so the children that Lucy has bitten are at risk. If the undead are killed, however, the curse is broken. The children will be freed, and Lucy's own curse of vampirism will be lifted. As long as she doesn't kill anyone before they can lift her undead curse, her soul will be freed. Van Helsing suggests that the one who loved Lucy most should be the one who frees her forever. On page 204 of the Norton Critical Edition, Arthur says hoarsely, "Tell me what I am to do." Van Helsing responds, "Take this stake in your left hand, ready to place the point over the heart, and the hammer in your right. Then, when we begin our prayer for the dead, I shall read him. I have here the book, and the others shall follow. Strike in God's name, so that all may be well with the dead that we love, and the undead pass away." Then Arthur took the stake and the hammer, and when once his mind was set in action, his hands never trembled, nor even quivered. Van Helsing opened his missal and began to read, and Quincy and I followed as well as we could. Arthur placed the point over the heart, and as I looked, I could see its dint in the white flesh. Then he struck with all his might. The thing in the coffin writhed, and a hideous blood-curdling screech came from the opened red lips. The body shook and quivered and twisted in wild contortions. The sharp white teeth champed together till the lips were cut and the mouth was smeared with crimson foam. But Arthur never faltered. He looked like the figure of Thor as his trembling arm rose and fell, driving deeper and deeper the mercy-bearing stake, whilst the blood from the pierced heart welled and spurted up around it. His face was set, and high duty seemed to shine through it. The sight of it gave us courage, so that our voices seemed to ring through the little vault. And then the writhing and quivering of the body became less, and the teeth ceased to champ, and the face to quiver. Finally, it lay still. The terrible task was over. After this, a purified peace settles over Lucy's body. Supported by Quincy, Arthur leaves the tomb. Seward and Van Helsing then finish the job by sawing the top off the stake, cutting off Lucy's head, and stuffing her mouth with garlic. They screw the coffin lid back on, lock the tomb, and once outside, give Holmwood the key. Lucy's end marks a significant turning point in the story. It is a defeat for Van Helsing as well as Dracula. Lucy, as a pure and idealized Victorian woman, has diverged from her path. Her virgin white lawn gown is now stained with blood. She does not hold her child victim tenderly as a mother, but as a diabolical creature. Everything sacred and maternal about her is ruined. At the same time, Van Helsing is established as the de facto leader of the group in absence of parental figures to guide them. But Van Helsing's role is elevated beyond that of parent as he also takes on the role of a spiritual guide to the crew of light. Much of Van Helsing's dialogue is spiritual in nature, and Van Helsing quotes actual scripture when he tells Arthur he is in the bitter waters. The climax of the struggle between Dracula and Van Helsing is a struggle between good versus evil. Destroying Lucy is a ritual infused with Christian imagery and language. The redemption of Lucy's soul was the goal, which is now complete. The chapter ends with a warning from Van Helsing about the great quest that still lies before them.